It's great to be with you. Thank you for what you do for the Lord and what you do for other people. Got a couple of door prizes here. One is between preachers. You can grow through interim ministry. When I started doing this 18 years ago, people started saying you need to write a book about interim ministry. Most people hadn't heard of it. And I said, I ain't got time to write a book. And at that time, I didn't like writing. I didn't start liking to write until I was 70 years old. So if that's still a grind for you, be patient. You might have a conversion experience. But I ran into a book called How to Blog a Book. And I read that and I said, wow, I ain't got time to write a book, but I could write 500 words every 2 weeks. And so I outlined what I thought ought to be in a book on interim ministry, and there you go. If you want to have the information without paying for it, if you'll go to my website, Between Preachers, and go all the way to the beginning and read backwards, you'll read what's in this book. I want to give this to the person who's been in full-time ministry the shortest time. The shortest time. Who? Somebody make a nomination.
I'm 1.5 months. George's like 1 month and a half.
Anybody beat a month and a half? Okay, this is. Now, the best book in our family was written by my wife, called Fleecy Clouds, One Woman's Story Surviving and Thriving After Childhood Abuse. Gail's mother died when she was 5 years old. She went to her aunt's house, who didn't like her because her daddy had dated her before he met Gail's mother, and she took it out on Gail. She moved from there to her grandmother's house, who beat her and her brother till the state had to take them away, and then 2 foster homes, and then she got introduced to Child Haven in Cullman, Alabama, which was wonderful. Child Haven, a home for fortunate children, and it was absolutely wonderful. Loved Child Haven, grew up there, went to Freed Hardeman. We got married, and in her 40s, she started having flashbacks and nightmares and all kinds of trouble. And she went to James Jones, a counselor we had, and after a year, she said, James, I'm over it. Thank you very much, and I don't ever want to talk about it again. And he was not a real loud, fast talker. He would look down, look at you, and he said, Gail, it would be a shame for you to waste all that pain. And part of her therapy was writing her life story, which she did in spiral notebooks. And he wanted to publish it. He said, there are people like you in every church, and we don't talk about it, and we're not aware of it. And she said, I'm not ready. About 4 years ago, I said, Gail, you're coming up on your 80th birthday. If you're going to write the book, it's about time to get started. So we got the services of Alice Sullivan, a ghostwriter who's written for Dave Ramsey and Michael Hyatt and Shaquille O'Neal and some others. And it was expensive. We think it's one of the best investments we've ever made. So, if you know anybody who might profit from reading this, or if you would profit from reading this, if you'll hold up your hand, if more than one does, we'll draw for it. Who would like to take this and share it with somebody and read it yourself? Yes, sir. So, advertisement. There is a third Monday workshop that started in August of 1988. Since August of 1988, we have missed 2 times meeting. There's a half-inch of ice all over Middle Tennessee both times, which means we meet every third Monday. You'll be surprised that the people ask, when's the next third Monday workshop going to be? Well, now here's the way we operate. We have devotional at 9:30, sermon outline 9:45. And then after the stress session, I lead a stress session for 50 minutes. And the basic idea of that, you can talk about anything you want to or ask any questions, and we won't ever tell on you. And so far as I know, that confidence has never been broken. We have a selected topic, which means you can talk about anything you want to, and then a book review, and then we go eat. We meet all the way from Clarksville down to Columbia. In August, we have a fish fry there, and that's always a great time. Our next one will be at Barker's Mill. The next one will be at Hendersonville. Hendersonville is the Christmas meeting. We always swap books. We play Dirty Christmas with books. Starts at 9:30. I always get there at 8:55. That's when the donuts are out, and I like jelly donuts, and they go first. So however you like donuts. So you're welcome to come. We got 2 or 3 who are hitting both places, so you'd be welcome if you'd like to. Well, I like to start with rules. I'm not going to go over all of them. But anytime that I speak, take one down, pass it around. My first rule is try not to learn very much. And that'll be easy with me talking. But try to find a mustard seed that will make a difference. That's been a principle of mine pretty well all my life. Try not to learn very much. I got my first computer in 1985, March of 1985. I'd never touched a computer. Well, I might have touched one, but I'd never done it. I never typed a word. I never had a class. $2,500. I got a leading edge. It was a HP clone, 20 megabyte hard drive. They said you'll never need to buy another computer. It will store 13,000 pages of information, which is the total pages in Encyclopedia Britannica, a monitor, and a dot matrix printer. Didn't know anything. And so I started learning, and my goal was to learn one new thing a day. First afternoon I got it, it had a tutorial. Never seen one before, a tutorial for the word processor, and it was a leading edge processor. They were brand new. And so I wrote 3 bulletin articles. I had a friend named Sam, and I said, Sam, I've written 3 bulletin articles, and I can't find them. He said, what did you name them? I said, what does that mean? He said, well, you got to give them a name or it won't save it. So that's the first thing. So many times what I would do, I would learn one thing. I'd go tell the secretary I'm going home because I've learned something today and I don't want to get confused. That's the way I started barefooted running, very gradually, just a little bit at a time. But it's amazing what you can learn. You'll find access to my podcast, Gleaning Mustard Seeds, which is first says try not to learn very much. That'll be easy with me talking. The average less than 10 minutes. And whatever I say today, you'll probably find there and on the 2 blogs that I have. That's the second sermon that I preach every time I go to a new church on mustard seeds. Try not to learn very much. So you might use that sometime. Okay, let me share with you some more bookmarks. I had those bookmarks printed. Here's an idea I picked up in the summer of 1969. I was at a vacation in Chattanooga, and a fellow said, did you hear about the sermon James Watkins preached on Sunday? And I hadn't, but I wrote it down. And this has been my meditation for the Lord's Supper ever since. You may have seen the sermon. 1 Lord, 2 thieves, 3 crosses, 4 soldiers, 5 wounds, 6 hours, 7 sayings, and on the back of the 7 sayings. And so my practice has been, while I'm taking the bread, I think of 1 Lord, 2 thieves, 1 received, 1 rejected, 3 crosses, 4 soldiers who were in a few feet of the greatest event besides the resurrection that ever happened since the creation of the world. What were they doing? Rolling dice, see if they could get a second-handed piece of clothes. And I don't want to be that close to the Lord's Supper and not get the benefit out of it. So there's all kind of meditation we can do. And then while I take of the fruit of the vine, I think of, I go over the 7 sayings. I did that until COVID. I haven't been able to do it hardly since then. Gail was interviewed on Stories of Amazing Grace. It's on YouTube. Larry Souter records that at first Wednesday of each month at the Bixler Chapel, Madison Church of Christ. They interviewed Gail about her book, and then a year later they interviewed me. And knew what we'd be talking about. He wanted to talk about interim ministry, running barefoot. He wanted me to have my dummy cousin Zeke from Coon Creek, and so we had him. But then he asked me a question I hadn't thought of. He said, how did COVID affect the church? And I think he was thinking about attendance and all that. Well, it just came to my mind. I said, well, we lost the Lord's Supper during COVID. He said, what are you talking about? I said, my wife and I were we were at a service recently where the man offered thanks for the bread, and I probably shouldn't have been peeping, but I was, and he gave us 7 seconds to remember Jesus, this do in remembrance of me, to look forward to his coming again, to examine ourselves, and to consider the body. 7 seconds, and you can't even say what you need to be doing, much less do it. And then he offered thanks for the fruit of the vine. 7 seconds. So I wrote a blog on this do in remembrance of me for 14 seconds. And what I plan to do, that's going to be preparing our minds for the Lord's Supper. That'll be this Sunday morning. I'll give everybody one of these bookmarks. And I'm going to offer thanks for the bread and go over and sit down for 2 minutes. Just because you're not passing the tray around doesn't mean you can't be quiet and think a little bit. And then I'll offer thanks for the bread and go. We had one that gave us 3 seconds between the fruit of the vine and let's pray for the money. Anyhow, those are free for the whatever you want to. So our topic today is elders. Elders. How do you have good relationships with your elders? And here is the first suggestion. The best way to get along with your elders is to get some good elders. That's the best way to do it. And so you do that when you're moving to a place. Don't pick out bad elders and then be disappointed because you got bad elders. If I were talking to, and I'll be doing that here in a few months, I'm at Hartsville Pike, and we're going through elder selection first. Usually my contract is 6 to 18 months when I'm working with a church, but so we've expanded that some. So we'll be selecting elders, and then we'll start selecting a preacher. 2 biggest mistakes in selecting preachers is people get in a hurry and they don't check references. I had a friend said, Jerry, I started church down in Georgia years ago, and their last 3 preachers have been lazy, just pure old D lazy. Pretty good preachers, interesting. They do their homework, but they're lazy. Do you think you can help that church find a preacher that's not lazy? And I said, no, I don't think I could help them any. Why not? I just can't help them any. They're probably not a preacher problem, it's a hiring problem. They didn't check references. Those fellows didn't get lazy when they crossed the state line of Georgia. They were that way before they got there. So if you get bad elders, it's because you picked out bad elders. Preacher told me one time, he said, I hate the trial press. It's absolutely horrible. You've got 5 to 7 people standing around asking you questions, and there's pressure. I said, well, what you need to do is equalize the pressure. Everybody's trying out when you're changing positions. They're trying out different preachers. The preacher has the choice of trying out different congregations. Everybody's got a choice. You need to have as many questions to ask them as they have to ask you. You need to check as many references on them as they check on you. When I was moving in 1988, I had a relatively new computer, and I'd learned the spreadsheet, and I decided to do a study of how we select preachers. I taught with 16 preachers, or 16 congregations. Learned a lot, and there's some blogs and podcasts about that. But one of the most interesting conversations I had a call from a fellow. We were at Freed Hardeman together. He was serving for as an elder in Mobile, Alabama. And he said, Jerry, here you're thinking about moving. Would you consider moving to Mobile? And I said, sure. I said, Gail and I have talked about it. We're going to consider anything in the lower 48. We're not looking at Alaska or Hawaii. Other than that, we'd be with. He said, okay. He said, here's what I need. I need resume, 3 references, and 3 tapes. Y'all don't remember the Old Testament back when you had to rewind stuff. But that's the way we did it back then. And I said, fine. I said, what I need from you, I need your attendance and contributions for the last 5 years. I need 3 references. I need 3 tapes of your present preacher Sunday morning and Sunday night. And there was silence on the other end of the phone for about a half an hour, as it says in the book of Revelation. And he said, what do you need those for? I said, what do you need mine for? He said, I don't know you. We don't know you. I said, I don't know you. Let's get acquainted. So that's what the search page is. You go to Between Preachers, the search. The top half is for thoughts for churches considering a preacher and has all kind of good stuff. And this is for preachers considering a church, Questions for Elders by Dale Jenkins, Brian McAllister, Jeremy Hout. And then Chad Landman, you've probably seen this, 25 questions every youth minister should ask. And then here's another one that's just pretty good here from Presbyterians or somebody. But that's some pretty good stuff. So you might look at that. Here's something else you might be interested in, interim ministry tools, resources. I'm a big person on rules. Here's some of the best books I ever read, some other tools, interim ministry network, Scrivener, Markdown. Y'all use that kind of stuff? Any of you use Markdown? Does that ring a bell with you? Markdown is a way to write code without knowing how to write code. It shows you how to use a Markdown editor, and you can do links and spaces and headers and just all kind of good stuff. And you use asterisks and slashes, and it tells you how to do all that. It's pretty neat. I do that for my website. You write that and everything's already formatted when you go to WordPress. And then here's something I want to hand out to you. First of all, pick out good elders. So once you get your good elders picked out, work on your family of origin. How many of you have studied about family systems, Bowen theory? Does that ring a bell with you? All right, I highly recommend that. I read something on that all the time. It took all the pressure just about away when you feel like you're not responsible for everybody in the world. It teaches us to mind our own business. And much of what we are, our leadership ability depends on the experiences we had growing up. Years ago, psychology would say your problems are because of your parents. They're the ones got you in the mess you're in. And so what you need to do is get away from them and you'll be okay. I heard one preacher in the church who was a counselor and a preacher, preached at some of the largest churches we have in our brotherhood. And I've heard him say in his lectures on family, the best way to get along with your in-laws is when you get married, move 600 miles away with 2 rivers and 1 bridge. And so essentially, get away from those folks that aggravate you. Family system says, no, that's not the way you do it. You need to learn more about your family. You need to try to understand your family. And one of the principles of family systems is the extended family field. And I like to ask a question. Incidentally, on the podcast, if you'll go 2, 1 is introduction. 2 is about 4 questions a lady asked me one day when I was running barefoot. She asked me, sir, do you know where you're going? Are you lost? Does anybody know where you are? And do you need a ride? And interactions with her and the police who came later it's the most listened to podcast I have. That's episode 2. The next 6 are on family systems. It'll be about a 10-minute explanation of family system. What family system says, I call it were my relatives human. See, a lot of people think their relatives were angels. I heard one preacher who was old enough to know better. He said, I don't think either one of my parents ever committed a sin in my whole life. I never saw it. Well, they did. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. Other people say, my mama was a devil. She was just devil. No, probably wasn't. Probably just a human. Hebrews chapter 11. If we know very much about those folks, they weren't all good. And yet they're the heroes of faith and Faith's Hall of Fame. They did some things right and some things wrong. Why did Noah get in the Hall of Fame? Was it because he built a boat longer than a football field, or because he got drunk one time? Well, it's because he had faith enough to do what God told him to do. Why is Moses there? Is it because he went to Pharaoh and said, let my people go, because he killed a man one time? Well, it was because, see, God says imitate their faith. Don't do everything they did, but you can find something. And we can do that. So find what is it in my family that I would like to imitate, and what is it I would like to change. I do this in premarital counseling. I've learned more in premarital counseling about dealing with myself and other people than I have in any college class on psychology, counseling, or anything else. Have you ever thought about how do you implement Genesis 2:24? For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. How do you do that? How do you leave and cleave? The best way I found is to go shopping. And the way we do that is I have 4 pages of questions. I give a copy to the bride, copy to the groom, and I tell them their homework for the next week. Write down your family rules and the family where you grew up. Well, we didn't have any rules. Yeah, every family has rules. They're usually unconscious, unspoken, understood, and contradictory, which means we don't think about it, we don't talk about it. If you mess up, you are in serious trouble. And they're contradictory, which means we bump into each other, and that causes stress. So write down what kind of rules you have. And incidentally, that's on one of these links and where I showed you in the tools on rules. Well, families have money rules. We either live within our means or we spend twice as much as we're making, wonder why we're having financial problems. We have time rules. Some families say we're going to be on time. Some families say we're going to be 15 minutes late. I don't care what time it starts. My family rule, Daddy said, anytime you leave, go there in time to have a flat tire. You need to be on time. If you have a flat tire, you still be on time. If you're not, you can talk to folks till it gets time to start. You have family rules of dress. You have family rules of attitude toward authority. You have family rules of how do you deal with conflict. And so you fill those out. So the bride and groom, they bring it back. We discuss that. I give them another. Now what I want you to do is go shopping in your family of origin, and what rules do you want to bring out of your family of origin and put into your new home. Go shopping. See, you have family rules. How do you celebrate birthdays? How do you celebrate Thanksgiving, Christmas? Where are you going to eat lunch? One of the fun things in premarital counseling is we have a session. Our last session is usually called in-law stew. In-law stew is where we invite the parents of the bride, parents of the groom. The groom, we come. My wife cooks the basis for that, the tomato stuff and the meat. And each family member, bride, groom, mama, daddy, brings a small can of vegetables. We dump all that into that. We eat it, cornbread, mock apple pie, and we go upstairs and talk about it. The reason these kids are going to be in the stew they're in is because of what everybody brought to the stew. And I thought it was pretty good, didn't you? Yeah. And so we start and we talk about some of these things. And we talk about what did you teach your kids you hope they remember? What did your parents teach you that'll help you to have a good home? And then we start talking about where you're going to eat lunch on Thanksgiving. Anybody ever have any conflict on that? We let the parents tell how they worked that out when they were young. And so these are some of the ways that we can go back, and asking these questions on family of origin helps you to understand. You're not there to convert. You're not there to condemn, say you messed up. Just tell me about it. How was it before I was born? What were your goals? How did you all handle conflict and all of those things? Okay, we've got good elders. We're looking at ourselves. Incidentally, I went to the Institute for Family Process in Bethesda, Maryland. It was started by Edwin Friedman, who wrote the book Generation to Generation. Beside the Bible, it's the most helpful book I've ever read in my life for ministry. Now, before you start reading it, you need to understand it is weird. Long sentences, long words, weird. Best book I've ever read, most practical thing I've ever read. People ask me sometimes, Jerry, I bought that book and it's got big words in it. Do you read generation to generation with one hand and the dictionary? No, I don't mess with the dictionary. Well, how do you deal with that? Well, my attitude when I started reading the book is try not to learn very much, and I get to a big word, I'll say, I'll skip that. I'll get to some I can understand. All you need is one good idea to make a significant difference in your life. And so it started by him, and it's expensive, but it's good. Meet a week in the fall, week in the winter, week in the spring. And to go, you take a 3-generation genogram. Does genogram ring a bell with any of you? Okay, genogram is used in family systems, and what it is a map of your family for 3 generations. You, mom and daddy, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, grandparents. And twice in the Bible it says, I'll visit the iniquities of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generation. Families do like families usually do. There are patterns. You've heard Dave Ramsey say you can change your family tree, but you're not going to do it by doing it like your family always did it. And if they were constantly in financial trouble, if you keep imitating that, you'll be constantly in financial trouble. But you can change the rules and change your family tree. So we went up there, and I did my 3-generation genogram. And I told my elders, I said, now I want you to be aware you may have to come and pick me up and bring me home. Because after I share my genogram, they may not let me on an airplane. And sure enough, what we'd do, we'd have lectures in the morning and case studies in the afternoon. On Wednesday afternoon, we sat around the table and shared our genogram, the emotional, the things that went on in our family. And our leader was a man who spoke at Edwin Friedman's funeral, the fellow who wrote Generation to Generation. I tell people I didn't get to meet Jesus, but I met one of the apostles. And I shared my genogram. And here's some things that stand out in my family. On my daddy's side, his daddy spent most of his life at Central State Hospital on Murfreesboro Road for people with mental illness. Only remember seeing him at home one time. We visited him in the hospital from time to time. Daddy had one brother who spent 6 years there, went without speaking to anybody. Nobody heard him speak a word, not a doctor, nurse, or family member. Daddy had a sister who had electroshock treatment for depression. On my mother's side, my granddaddy committed suicide, an uncle committed suicide, a first cousin committed suicide. Mama had 2 sisters that went every 10 years for electroshock treatment. And sure enough, there wasn't another person around that table who had that kind of suicide and things in their life. Nobody. Fellow right to the left of me, his family was into homicides. They killed other people. They didn't kill themselves, they shot other folks, and they did it for generation after generation. So what a genogram helps you to do is to recognize what's going on here and see what you can do to change your family tree. Now, May 1 through 7, I had the opportunity to go to rehab. I don't know if you've ever heard of on-site. On site, they have a facility in Cumberland Furnace and one in San Diego. One in San Diego is half owned by Bob Goff. I don't know if it's half or not, but he and Miles Adcox own it together. Must be pretty good. Dr. Phil sends people there. Their fee is $7,000 for a 6-day program or $50,000 for a 30-day program. We were getting ready to celebrate my 80th birthday, which was March 15th. I read in the Bible, Psalm 90:10, you're going to live about 70, 80 years. I got thinking, man, that's the outside limit there. And I wouldn't want to miss my 80th birthday party. So I decided to have it a week or two earlier in case I died before I was 80, I wouldn't miss the party. So we were eating up at Patty's. Craig, you're familiar with Patty's. And Braden was sitting to my right. Braden Parsons is my grandson. He works for OnSite as a videographer. If you go to Instagram and see those videos, he's in a lot of them, and he does the editing and photography of a lot of the rest of them. He said, Granddad, they're having a special week for preachers at OnSite in San Diego. The foundation's going to take care of the fee. All you have to do is pay a $200 registration fee and get there and back. Had enough Southwest points to do that. I could afford the $200, so I went for a week. Probably the second best gift I've ever been given as a preacher. They work on family systems without talking about family systems. And all kinds of ways they do that. One of the most painful things is when you go, you turn in your cell phone, your Apple Watch. I had to go to Walmart and pay $10.95 for a clock or for a watch so I could know what time to go to supper. But they work on that, and they work on your family systems, and they talk about the issues in your family, and you act that out and become aware of it. And then they spread a cloth over here and say, tell me about the folks who give you the most trouble in your church. Guess what? They're folks who do stuff like your family did when you were growing up. And the theory is if you get your stuff settled with your family, folks in church won't aggravate you that much. Back to Center for Family Process in Bethesda, Maryland. We had a preacher from Maine who in the fall talked about a lady at church that just aggravated him to death. He said she interrupts. Sunday after Sunday, he'll be talking to somebody, maybe a visitor, somebody's trying to talk, and she just steps in and starts talking. He said, it just drives me crazy. And our leader said, anybody in your family do like that? He said, yeah, my mama does it all the time. She said, okay, here's your homework. Your parents still alive? Yeah. Visit them? Yeah, visit them pretty often. Okay. When you're visiting your family, don't accuse anybody, but just describe what this lady does and say, do y'all have any suggestions? Well, he came back in our next session and he gave his report. And he said, it's magic. It's magic. He said, I went and told my family, Mom and Daddy, what was happening. And he said, I don't even remember what they said. But I talked to them. And I went back to my church, and that lady has not interrupted me one time since then. And he said, my mother no longer interrupts me. I told you generation to generation is weird. He called it magic. But the theory is, if we work out our stuff with our family of origin, folks in church are not going to aggravate us near as much. How do you get along with your elders? One is to show a lot of appreciation for your elders. One of the first questions I ask when I go to a church, how long has it been since you had an elders appreciation party? You know what most people say? I never had one. 1 Thessalonians 5 said you need to know those who labor among you and over you in the Lord and esteem them very highly and love for their work's sake. Well, I don't agree with a lot of stuff they do. He didn't say that. If they agree with everything you want them to do, to esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake. I don't think I've ever agreed with everything that eldership did. I really hadn't been associated with many, if any, who didn't spend a lot of time doing the best they knew how to do. Now they need help. It's one of the great things. Well, I've had a lot of others, but the people where I am now, they said, Jerry, we're communicating the best way we know how. We're not doing it well enough. Could you please help us do it better? Boy, it's easy to work folks like that. Went to one church. Asked them, how long has it been since you had an elders appreciation party? They said, we never had one. I said, why? They said, we don't appreciate our elders. Let me tell you what's powerful. I have a theory that a group is the length and shout of its leaders. Let's go ahead about 3 years after that. Ask that as soon as they get there. We were in an elders meeting. They had 12 elders. Only 11 were there this night. We met at 6 before 7 o'clock services, and the elder who was not there walked in about 10 minutes late, and he had a letter, and he passed it out to each person there. And he was resigning after 30 years of serving as an elder for that church. They were very polite and said, please don't do that. You're a good elder. We'd like you to stay. And he said, I appreciate that. But my wife and I have thought about it, my age and my health. It's time for me to go. So he left. And I said, when we're going to have an elders appreciation party? They said, what are you talking about? I said, when we're going to have a party to express appreciation for this man for 30 years service. Oh, we're not going to do something like that. I said, man, surely 30 years. Surely we're going to do something to say thank you. You've made a great difference. Oh, well, who's going to buy his plaque? What are you talking about? I said, well, sure you're going to give him a plaque for 30 years. We're not going to give him any plaque. Man, you start giving parties and plaques, everybody want to quit. Elders didn't appreciate elders. And for some weird reason, the church didn't appreciate elders. And we're going to express any appreciation for it. Gail cooked a delicious meal. We invited that man and his wife to our house. We bought them a nice book, wrote them a letter of appreciation. We had an elders appreciation party at our house. I've tried preaching with encouragement and without it, and with works a whole lot better. I have a blog post called 4 Ways to Get Rid of a Bad Elder. Number 1, appoint good, qualified elders. One of the mistakes I made one time in my ministry, we were desperate. We had 3 elders, 1 died, so it means we're 1 short of none. So we jumped in just as quick as we could to replace the one that was gone and made a huge mistake. And after he fired me on December the 19th, 1976 at 10:20 in the morning, not that I keep records or anything, which was right between Bible study and worship. So I have another blog post and a podcast, the best day of the week to fire a preacher. You'll know what day is? I think Monday. A lot better than Sunday right between Bible study and worship. See, he just called me into his office and said, Brother Jerry, would you step in the office? And I did. And he said, Brother Jerry, he wasn't mad, probably scared to death. He said, I think it'd be a good idea if you'd resign today. I looked at my notes. I'd stayed off. There wasn't anything in my notes about that. Never crossed my mind. I walked into the auditorium, and the first song we sang was Anywhere Is Home. Horrible. I had a lady to come in not long after that, and she said, Jerry, I knew we shouldn't have appointed him as an elder, and named the reason why. I said, I did too. I said, what'd you do about it? She said, nothing. I said, I didn't either. Look at the mess we're in. See, there's some reasons you can go through a process when you're appointing elders. If you mess up the process, don't expect to get good results. Frequently express appreciation to good men who are serving well. Plan and participate in times of group expressions of gratitude for their service. Here's some reasons to show gratitude. I want to express Appreciation because I need encouragement. I want our young people to love and value our shepherds and aspire to serve when they're older. If all they hear is criticism and how inept, why would anybody want a position like that everybody's going to criticize, talk about how lousy they are? Third reason, I want to express appreciation because I want to question and challenge them when I disagree with them. And if all I've done since they were appointed is disagree, criticize, and then I really get something I need to criticize, they say, well, that's what he does. That's all we've heard since we've been elders. He just criticizes. I think that'll work. Let me tell you more about the story. I was released. We only had 2 elders. Incidentally, he failed to mention that to the other elder before he told me he thought it'd be good for me to resign. That didn't sound too good, but that's what he did. One of the men heard what he had done and called him out, and he said, He said, I understand you fired Jerry without talking to the other elders. Is that right? He said, yeah. He said, I think you ought to resign. I can't serve. He said, well, okay. And he resigned the next Sunday. So now we have no elders. 2 or 3, 4 weeks I go in and they're having a men's business meeting. They said, Jerry's looking for a job and we're looking for a preacher. I'll make a motion we hire Jerry Barber as our next full-time preacher. Somebody said, I'll second that. I won 10 to 2. And now I'm hired. A fella came up and said, Jerry, I need to talk to you just a minute. We went into my office. He said, Jerry, I hope you don't stay here and try to save this church. He said, I think if you do, I think it'll hurt you, it'll hurt your family, and it'll hurt this church. And he said, I love you like a brother. Big old tears rolling down his cheeks. Made me mad, hurt my feelings. Man, I'm fired, I'm hired, and this and that tells me you need to leave anyhow. And I'm jogging the next day. I do my best Bible study when I'm running. And I get to reflecting, why would John Smith do that to me? What has he done ever since he's moved here? Well, here's what he's doing. Jerry, that was a good sermon Sunday morning. You know, I'd never thought of that before. Jerry, you do a great job teaching Bible class. It is evident in every class. You've done your homework. You read. Jerry, you and Gail doing anything Thursday night? We'd like for you and Gail, Jerry Wayne, and Christy to come over. Barber going to cook a meal. We just want you to know how much we appreciate it. That's what he's done ever since he's been here. Now, was he telling the truth when he complimented me, or was he telling the truth last night when he said he thought it'd be best for me and the church for me to leave, or was he telling the truth both times as he saw it? And you know what my conclusion is? He was telling the truth both times. And I listened because all he had done since I'd met him was compliment. And when he said something with a different note, I could hear the harmony in the ring after sleeping on it. There's some of the ideas on how to get rid of a bad preacher, and it'd probably work for a bad elder if we had compliment until there was a disagreement. He might listen to us. We got a minute to ask questions. What would you like to ask? Questions, comments, criticism. I love criticism, incidentally. You'll find two messages on it's under workshops on the resources on how to accept, invite, and enjoy criticism. I remember Craig ordered a CD of that when he was in Calvert City. And then there's a follow-up. I love criticism, but not too much. And that's what you do with malicious criticism. Some people are just going to tear you apart. And now look at what Jesus said. You take 2 slaps, buy 2 gifts, run 2 miles, and then you make 2 visits with 2 witnesses, and then if a person is contention after the first and second admonition, reject Titus 3, 10, and 11. So you might get a mustard seed there. Yes, sir.
So how do you help elderships from minister position move into shepherding rather than super deaconing?
Boy. That is the question. And I've been talking about that. I preached a series of 7 sermons on how to survive the storm and enjoy the sunshine. You'll find those outlines there. have to build a good relationship with them. Acts chapter 6, the apostles said it would not be right for us to leave the Word of God in prayer and serve tables. It is not reason, it is not right. One translation said it would be wrong. When you decide that doing right is wrong at the wrong time, then if you believe the Bible, you'll quit doing what's wrong and start doing right. When I read that, I think, well, the apostles, did they think they were too good to do something like that, or were they too dumb? And you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, said neither one of those. When Jesus fed the 4,000 and 5,000, who distributed the food? The apostles. Who cleaned up after the picnic? The apostles. So they weren't too dumb, and they weren't too good. They said, at this point in our ministry, would be right. We're not going to the grocery store. But we'll help you solve the problem. You select 7 men full of the wisdom of the Holy Spirit whom we may appoint over this business. And there are several blog posts. Why do elders do that? They were good deacons. They like what they did. They don't want anybody else messing it up, so they keep doing what they were doing. Preacher explained it one time. I was in a meeting in Henderson, Kentucky, and an older man, hot summertime, working on an air conditioner. After about 2 days, I said, don't you all have a deacon over that? He said, yeah. I said, why is that elder out there doing that instead of the deacon? Here's what he said, Jerry, it's easier to deal with air conditioners than to deal with people. And so it's a long process. It's such a habit, they just hard to get out of it. But I can make some progress. Time's up. I'll hang around if we need to talk some more.